Once upon a time in the small town of Akere, where the mountains watched over the trees and the trees whispered secrets to the wind, a girl named Naomi was born. But before Naomi was even a thought, there was her mother, Shadi, a girl so beautiful that even the river seemed to sparkle brighter when she walked by. Shadi's beauty was like the morning sun, lighting up the whole once upon a time, in the small town of Akere where the mountains watched over the trees and the trees whispered secrets to the wind, a girl named Naomi was born. But before Naomi was even a thought, there was her mother, Shad, a girl so beautiful that even the river seemed to sparkle brighter when she walked by. Shad's beauty was like the morning sun, lighting up the whole schoolyard. Every eye, every boy, every friend saw her and whispered her name like it was magic. But beauty, as they say, can sometimes be a trap, and it was for Shad. Her mathematics teacher, Mr. Olu, a man with eyes like cold stones and a smile like a hidden snake, took notice. "Shad, come by my house," he said one day, his voice soft but slippery. He promised to help with her studies, but Shad, innocent as morning dew, didn't know that Mr. Olu's promises were hollow like an empty calabash. When she came, Mr. Olu tricked her. She was alone with him, and his words were like a net, tangling her up until she couldn't escape. Then, he took her to the room and slept with her. That was the day Naomi's life began, though no one knew it yet. Soon, Shad found herself carrying a child. She was pregnant. Her parents, proud and strict as two palm trees, couldn't bear the shame. They had heard of Olu's ways, always drunk, always stumbling, careless as a broken pot. When they heard of the child, they turned their backs, leaving Shad with no place to go but to Olu's home. So, Shad moved in with Olu, but Olu, he was no comfort. His eyes were often cloudy, his voice rough. He stumbled through the days, sometimes forgetting Shad was there. And so, in that little house with the roof leaking and the nights long, Shad stayed, her heart heavy like a stone in her chest, waiting for the day her child would be born. And that was how Naomi, a small girl with eyes bright as stars, came into the world in a town where even the trees seemed to keep secrets. Shad's life with Olu was like a long, dark night without stars. She carried her heavy belly alone in that small, broken house. Olu, always stumbling and reeking of sour palm wine, barely noticed her. Each night, he would go out, laugh and drink until he was more shadow than man. When he came home, he would collapse like a fallen tree, his eyes foggy and his voice loud like thunder in a storm. Shad sat alone, her hands resting on her belly, whispering soft words to the child inside her. "One day, you will see the sun," she'd say, her voice a gentle breeze in the quiet night. She dreamed of a better life for her child, away from Olu's carelessness, away from the noise and the smells. But dreams are only dreams, and for Shad, each day felt heavier than the last. Then, like a bright morning after a stormy night, Naomi was born. Her skin was soft as flower petals, and her eyes sparkled deep and bright, just like her mother's. The people said she was a beauty, even as a baby. Shad held her close, her heart swelling with love, yet mixed with worry. "Olu," she whispered one night as Naomi lay sleeping, "our daughter deserves more. She needs care, warmth, love." But Olu only grunted, his mind lost in drunken dreams. His care for Naomi was as thin as smoke, slipping away before it could settle. Shad knew deep down that this house, with its broken roof and broken promises, was no place for Naomi. Shad's heart ached as she watched her daughter grow, knowing that the love she had couldn't protect her from Olu's careless ways. She looked at Naomi, tiny and innocent, and decided she would find a way. Shad knew she couldn't give Naomi the life she deserved in Olu's house, so one day, with her heart heavy but hopeful, she carried Naomi to her grandparents' home. There, James welcomed the little girl with open arms. James was known throughout the town as a tall, wise man, and Shad knew that Naomi would be safe and loved in his care. If you've made it this far, I encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel to continue enjoying fascinating content like this. Your support is very important to us. And as sturdy as an old tree, James's voice was like a deep drumbeat, and the people respected him for he was a man of few words but many lessons. Naomi grew up under his watchful eye, a curious and quiet child. She watched her grandfather closely, learning the rhythm of his days. James would sit in his wooden chair under the big tree, eyes fixed on the distance, always deep in thought. He was strict but gentle, guiding her with a steady hand. Yet, like a hidden stream under the soil, James had a secret. When the sun dipped low and the town quieted down, he would take out a small cigarette, roll it carefully, and light it, letting the smoke drift up like whispers to the sky. Naomi, small and curious, often peered from the corner of the room, watching as the smoke curled from his mouth and nose. She didn't understand it, but she was fascinated, her young mind wrapping around the mystery of it all. In the town, life moved slowly like the river that curved around the trees. Naomi played with the other children, ran through the fields, and helped James fetch water from the well. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and her laughter was as light as the morning breeze. But Naomi's heart was like a sponge, soaking in everything she saw. She loved her grandfather, respected him, and even imitated the way he held his head high. In those quiet moments, watching him puff on his cigarette, a tiny spark of curiosity began to flicker in her heart, though she didn't yet know what it meant. Behind James's house, a group of young men gathered every afternoon, their voices loud with laughter and their hands holding cups filled with a sour-smelling drink. They would sit in a circle, sharing cigarettes, the smoke curling around them like tiny clouds. They laughed, joked, and sometimes argued, their voices bouncing through the air like pebbles on water. Naomi, with her curious eyes and quiet footsteps, would slip behind the bushes to watch them. The way they held their cigarettes, blowing smoke from their mouths and noses, reminded her of her father, Olu, back when she was little. She watched the smoke dance around these men, curious and captivated. Their faces glowed with a strange joy she didn't quite understand, but something about the way the smoke floated and swirled held her like a spell. She would stay hidden, crouched like a little rabbit, eyes wide as she watched the men make rings with their smoke. Sometimes she'd even see one of them puff out 2 streams of smoke, one from each nostril, like a dragon from the stories James would tell her. The men never noticed her peeking. They were too caught up in their own world, laughing and passing the cigarettes around. With each passing day, Naomi felt her curiosity grow. The smoke, the laughter, the mystery of it all. She didn't understand it yet, but the sight stayed with her like a little ember glowing in her mind. Little by little, the smoky influence drifted into her thoughts, wrapping around her like the curls of smoke she watched so carefully, leaving a mark that would one day call to her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. One bright afternoon, as Naomi was playing near her home, the young men behind James's house spotted her. They waved her over, laughing and calling her name. "Naomi, come here, little one," one of them said, grinning. Naomi, always eager to help, ran up to them, her eyes curious and wide. "Can you do us a small favor?" another asked, holding out a few coins. "Get us some cigarettes from the town shop, will you?" Naomi nodded quickly, taking the coins in her tiny hands, feeling proud to be trusted with such an errand. She dashed off to the shop, her feet quick on the dusty path. When she returned with the cigarettes, the men thanked her with big smiles, ruffling her hair and calling her a good girl. The warmth of their laughter made her heart feel light, as if she had done something important. Soon, this small favor turned into a regular task. "Naomi, fetch us some cigarettes, will you?" they'd call out, tossing her coins, knowing she would always help. Each time, Naomi would run off, her feet quick and her heart eager. Over time, the smell of the cigarettes became familiar to her, like the scent of firewood or Thea sturdy as an old tree. James's voice was like a deep drum beat, and the people respected him, for he was a man of few words but many lessons. Naomi grew up under his watchful eye, a curious and quiet child. She watched her grandfather closely, learning the rhythm of his days. James would sit in his wooden chair under the big tree, eyes fixed on the distance, always deep in thought. He was strict but gentle, guiding Naomi with a steady hand. Yet, like a hidden stream under the soil, James had a secret. When the sun dipped low and the town quieted down, he would take out a small cigarette, roll it carefully, and light it, letting the smoke drift up like whispers to the sky. Naomi, small and curious, would peer from the corner of the room, watching as the smoke curled from his mouth and nose. She didn't understand it, but she was fascinated, her young mind wrapping around the mystery of it all. I hope you enjoyed this amazing trip. Subscribe and don't miss our next video. See you next time.